The existence of vampiric kind in the world of darkness is distinct from other supernaturals in the fact that kindred are the only ones, mostly, that possess immortality on a large societal scale. While you may have a mage here or there that has surpassed their mortal lifespans by the ways of true magic, or a Rokea, whom are the only shape changers that possess immortality as a gift from Gaia, all kindred are capable of living indefinitely until they are destroyed. As such, a system of gauging one's potential, value, or threat through age has been a staple in kindred society. You would think that societal systems would change with the times, as it is in the mortal world. The venerable rarely change their ways and outlooks on how things should be done. This is magnified tenfold in Canaanite society, as that ancestor from 1,000 years ago could very well still be kicking around, and they are not accepting of the new ways, and they have the power to back up their perspectives. Case in point, Urshulgi, when he woke up and essentially took control of most of the Banu Hakim shortly after, severing centuries-long curses from another clan and essentially telling the rest of his clanmates, shape up or get fucked. But what is that system? How do you kindred recognize each other outside of your typical stations of status within a sect? It really comes down to age bracketing. Although the stipulations of these are not set in stone and can vary widely by domain and personal perspective, there are some foundational guidelines that most kindred, young and old, acknowledge. Fledgling, Neonate, Ancilli, Elder, Methuselah, and beyond. So, what is a fledgling? A fledgling is a newly created vampire still under the protection of their sire. A fledgling, if you are looking for numerical terms, is a newly created vampire within 0 to 5 years of unlife, as this is the amount of time normally it takes for a newly created kindred to learn how to be themselves as a vampire. After the immediate embracing of a mortal, the victim will become the fledgling. The newly turned vampire must be able to stabilize the beast within themselves before gaining any status. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the sire to ensure that the child is even worthy of the embrace. When the vampire has at least passed through these initial stages of vampiric existence and no longer needs the protection of their sire, that fledgling will then be viewed as a neonate, which we will get into later. The term fledgling is often used as a derogatory label by many elders upon younger kindred, no matter their age, but for the most part, a fledgling is little more than an infant in kindred society, still having to cling off the teat of their sire. They don't know anything about how to behave, how to conduct themselves. They don't know how to control the beast within. They have to learn how to hunt. They need a teacher for these things, which usually ends up being their sire. You could be a well-respected executive board member of 40 years old, but as soon as you're embraced, you're a baby. No established kindred is going to treat you like a big shot after that. You may have some remedial respect depending on the circumstances of your embrace, but do not get it twisted. You are being watched. As soon as you fuck up, you're done. And in many cases, it'll be your own sire that puts you down. It's a trial period, and to be honest, it's one of the most dangerous times for a kindred's unlife. The average lifespan of many new vampires is a mere 2 years. You'll be manipulated, sent on tasks that you may not return from, given jobs that may be above your station, but you have to persevere anyway. That is what it means to be a fledgling. And should you survive, should you prove yourself worthy and able, you will evolve into the next level of acknowledgement, known as a neonate. Neonate. An old-form term to describe a recently embraced vampire. A neonate is a recently embraced vampire that has passed through the initial stages of vampiric existence, the fledgling stage. But it is still the sire's responsibility to ensure that the child does not embarrass itself or its sire in vampiric society. Derogatorily, a neonate is often called a whelp by their betters. You are still under the thumb of those above you, though you may be quote-unquote acknowledged as a self-functioning kindred, you still have to be watched. Neonates are generally lightly involved with the true machinations of undead society, barely even considered a full-fledged kindred. They aren't powerful enough to really matter, and are consequently used primarily as pawns by their elders. Though a neonate may have rudimentarily proved themselves, you still need to be watched. Babysat, guided, and told what to do by your betters. Like I said before, you haven't been around long enough to acquire and retain assets, resources, connections, domains, all of the things that take many, many years or generations to even establish to give yourself the edge that you need to really be on your own. And so, you must be controlled. Conversely, however, neonates do have something that older kindred most often do not. And that is that they still have an investment in the mortal world of the 21st century in a more direct way, and are less likely to adhere to that feudal system that older kindred try to impose. What neonates lack in blood potency, power, and long-term resources, they make up for in gumption, the spark of change, and a keen understanding of the modern world, something that many elders and ancillae lack. That understanding and ability to maneuver within mortal society in more direct ways has proven to be quite a potent boon to the younger kindred of society, and many elders worth their weight in vitae understand that though neonates are young and comparatively weak, they are not to be underestimated. The neonates are more directly involved. They have assets and influences and connections, but they are more connected with them. They may still have an active job. They may be the ruling power of a street gang that actually is seen and heard and talks to. They are there. They may still have connections with personal, mortal connections like family. A lot of ancillae and elders are removed from such things. If you really feel that neonates aren't worth their weight in anything, well then you just aren't paying attention. But after so long, a neonate will transition to an ancillae. And that's where the game, I think, truly begins for a kindred. Ancillae. Ranking below the elders, but above the neonates. The ancillae, or ancilla for singular, are vampires who have proven themselves as valuable members of kindred society. Certain ambitious neonates may achieve the rank prematurely, as it isn't always predicated on age, but ancillae often serve as aides and agents for elders of the court holding ancillary stations, such as the sheriff, seneschal, harpy, keeper of Elysium, or herald, although there are some ancillae that have held princedom in recent nights. Ancillae usually play their own power games as well, though these are lesser consequences than the manipulations of the elders, but not any less lethal. Due to the huge increase in world population over the past few centuries, the vast majority of vampires in the world are ancillae or neonates. Ancillae vampires that have existed between 100 to 200 years of unlife. But what does it mean to really be considered ancillae? What does it mean to be ancillae? Ancillae are often seen as the middle management of vampire society. Positioned uniquely between the burgeoning Neonates and the entrenched Elders, this position allows them to wield considerable influence, acting as intermediaries, enforcers, or advisors. Their relative youth compared to Elders grants them more flexibility, knowledge, and adaptability, while their experience provides them with knowledge and skills surpassing that of Neonates. Being an Ancile comes with its own set of challenges, however, and opportunities. They often bear the burden of managing the day-to-day political and social intricacies of vampiric society, a role replete with both peril and power. Ancile are key players in the politics of the night, engaging in the internal jockeying for position and favor amongst their peers and superiors, the eternal jihad, and the Ancile are smack dab in the middle of it. The political life of an Ancile is a balancing act. On one hand, they must navigate the demands and expectations of more powerful elders, who may see them as tools or threats. On the other hand, they hold sway over Neonates, guiding or manipulating them as pawns in the complex games of vampiric society. Ancile often form their own factions and alliances, leveraging their collective power to influence events and outcomes within their domains. For an Ancile, the path to becoming an elder is fraught with peril but also ripe with potential. Success involves accumulating power, wisdom, and allies, while avoiding the pitfalls that have claimed many of their kind. Many Ancile develop intricate plans and long-term strategies aiming to secure their ascent through the ranks of vampiric society. In vampiric culture, Ancile are often respected for their survival skills and feared for their ambition. They are the bridge between the old and the new, embodying the tension and the transition from the reckless freedom of new blood to the calculated dominance of the ancients. Their unlife is a test of endurance and cunning, a prolonged battle to rise above the fray and claim a place among the storied elders of the night. Elders. The term elder is used in Canite society to denote the status of a kindred who is, well, old. The numerical value differs depending on who you ask, but it's anywhere between 200 to 300 plus years old of unlife. And while there is no strict definition for obtaining the status of elder, one must normally be of age with appreciable claims to domain or a variety of other assets and far removed from their mortal past to qualify. The choices and sacrifices they have made in order to survive so long instills a degree of amorality and slow caution. It is not unusual for elders to design plans that take decades or centuries before coming to fruition. Such beings are often cold, if not monstrous, and focus completely on their own interests and well-being, though a rare few struggle to maintain their human sentiments. There is a long-standing cycle of jealousy, contempt, and resentment between elder and younger vampires, being especially pronounced between sires and their childer. Elders often use their greater power and influence to oppress those younger than them out of fear of being outnumbered, and because most vampires of such age believe they know what's best in the same way that mortal elders feel that theirs is the better way. Younger vampires naturally chafe under such treatment and grow jealous and resentful of the elders' positions and power. It was this cauldron of emotions that gave rise to the Anarch Revolt and all the things thereafter. Typically, elders of Europe and the Old World are much older than those across the Atlantic Ocean. The colonization of the Americas led to a great kindred migration as young bloods saw the opportunity to claim new domains and escape from being under the thumb of the ancient asshats that kept using them as their playthings in their insufferable jihad. Though, unfortunately, even in the New World, the jihad could not be escaped, as many older kindred saw the same fruits and decided to transmigrate over. Most of the time, elders are the oldest active vampires in undead society, possessing powers unknown and a mind alien to most mortals and younger kindred, but none can really be considered truly powerful, other than those that are even older than elders, the ones that span millennia of age. Yes, I am speaking about the famed Methuselah. A Methuselah, presumably a vampire of the 4th and 5th generations who have lived for over 1,000 years. The term Methuselah is derived from a biblical patriarch who died at the ripe old age of 969, allegedly, in the Great Flood, and became a cultural icon synonymous with longevity. You will actually hear many mortals refer to extremely venerable, seasoned people as Methuselah in a sort of ribbing way, for the most part. But, as I stated, a Methuselah is presumably a 4th or 5th generation elder, who has been in unlife for a millennium or more. Many of these elders are generally old enough to have known their clan progenitor, or Antediluvian, which we will touch on, and usually serve as lieutenants, so to speak, in the jihad. The term is also used to refer to elders who have very little to do with the Camarilla or the Sabbat. Their machinations are far deeper, subtler, and more terrifying, mostly done out of fear, since elders who already possess a great amount of power, but also find themselves removed from the vast majority of Canaanite society, instill fable and tales of their powers, their machinations, and things like that. They go bump in the night for the younger kindred, the Neonates, the Fledglings, and even some Ancillae. But Methuselahs are creatures even above that. A Methuselah has several traits that betray them to those who know what to look for. Their speech is in general tinted with an accent of their native dialect, which is usually some sort of dead dialect or language. Their unconscious body movements have completely stopped, and many could be confused with statues when they do not move. Many have also reached a point where the kind's blood, mortal blood, can no longer even nourish them, forcing them to feed on other vampires. Or their lust for vitae is so grand that it would take a veritable ton of mortals to really satiate their lust. Some Methuselahs are absolutely alien in their visage, such as any Nosferatu of this caliber, or a notable figure, Urshulgi, which I have discussed before, whom resembles a young teenage boy that had been burned to the point of blackened, cracked flesh, bones protruding from various points devoid of any physical eyes, with an unsettling fiery glow emanating from the cracks in his skin. His movements are almost flickering, as if a still image being repositioned in various ways between blinks. Methuselahs are masters of the jihad outside of the Antediluvians. They hold considerable power and sway, having many institutions under their command, such as the Cult of Mithras or the Shepherds of Urshulgi, while others maintain an unlife of secrecy, such as Helena masquerading as Portia. And others still maintain a relatively peaceful unlife in the open, providing their wisdom and teachings to those whom seek it, such as Critias and his School for Kindred in Chicago, while others still maintain a relative upstanding position within the sects of Kindred society, such as Al-Ashrad within the Camarilla or Tigurius of the Ashira. The minds and machinations of these veritable blood gods are beyond true comprehension outside of any of their peers in age. What they think, what they feel, crave, aspire to is wondrous yet terrifying, though that is not something that you would want to delve deeply into unless you are fully prepared to engage in the monstrous things that an alien mind like that could ever produce. But those things might be best left unknown for younger kindred. Even knowing Canaanites of such age and potency exists, there exists still a creature above them, the fabled Antediluvian. So, what is an Antediluvian? They are a vampire of incalculable power, a veritable blood god, 13 of whom survived the biblical deluge and who are usually considered to be the founders of the 13 clans. Technically, the term Antediluvian means before the blood, and so any Cainite that precedes that could be considered Antediluvian, but for the sake of conversation amongst kindred to discuss these things, it specifically refers to the third generation. Most believe these godlike beings to be either in torpor, manipulating jihad, or dead, but there are a large number of myths and prophecies, tales and fables surrounding the clan founders, many of which are contradictory and suspect. However, certain beliefs have prevailed throughout vampiric history, particularly in regards to their actions in Gehenna, the vampiric apocalypse. While some clans regard their progenitor favorably, as a whole, the Antediluvians are often portrayed as boogeymen that will one day rise and devour their descendants. There are rarely reasons given for this, but clan-wide purges have occurred in the past, and Gehenna is seen as a time of blood and reckoning for Cainites. Presumably, the Antediluvians are of such age and potency that they possess nearly godlike power, and in fact some of them may be deities that have been portrayed through cultures in the past millennia. Very few records of such power being used exist, but legends typically portray them as undefeatable. Some even theorize that the only way for creatures to be killed like this is if they desire it, or is at the hands of another of their equal. Whether that is true or not, they seem to suffer from at least some of the traditional curses of vampirism, namely the thirst for blood, the ravages of the beast, and the vulnerability to sunlight, things that even Cain himself could not escape. And although their mastery of the disciplines may have mitigated these weaknesses to some degree, their existence and activities from the world, particularly, are hidden as they try their best to maintain a level of secrecy in the modern knights. Many kindred in the modern knights believe that they are the ones directing the jihad, and they must also possess incredible level of influence and or knowledge, and perhaps even the ability to manipulate those who bear their blood. In fact, blood lineage is often cited as a factor in an antediluvian's power, and most assume that each is concerned most of all with their own clan. There are also some examples of ancient vampires bestowing portions of their power to other vampires, and while few ancients are actually known as thaumaturgists, they seem to possess a great deal of versatility, which is evident in the various artifacts said to have been created by these antediluvians. Otherwise, members of the third generation are often attributed to having complete mastery over their clan disciplines. Though this may not be true for the youngest of the antediluvians, it is difficult to state clearly which disciplines apply when considering bloodlines and clans that have changed disciplines over the millennia. In any case, these truly ancient gods of blood are considered mere rumor in the modern knights. Many neonates and Silae and even elders seldom come into contact with even Methuselah, who are seen as the bridge between fable and reality, as many Methuselah themselves claim to have known their antediluvian, such as Urshulgi. When it comes to these ancient worlds, the tales of Gehenna and everything associated with these antediluvians, they're just stories. Stories of the night meant to scare the young bloods into submission so they toe the line and behave. Right? These are the age constructs built through oceans of time that delineate between young, old, ancient, and godlike. I hope this information was helpful to you and yours. I know it's been a little bit since I've dropped a video for you all, but personal matters persist and they must be dealt with in turn. Please share, like, and subscribe, as any interactions are always greatly appreciated, and I would love to continue to see this channel grow. I'll see you in the next video real soon, and remember, nothing good ever happens after dark.